Hi everyone, this week is all about the SINNIS SM-R 125. It's a new bike come out this year by SINNIS. They also make an XE version which has a bigger front wheel, knobbly tyres and more off-road focus. This is more of a supermoto style bike with two 17-inch wheels on the front and the rear there. We have Timson tyres, which are road orientated tyres. Decent amount of ground clearance there, which is pretty cool. Overall a nice looking bike, nicely finished, and considering that the bike is under £3.5 grand on the road, I mean in 125 terms that's a stonking price, isn't it? And the thing I like about this bike really is that I remember the days of the Yamaha DT 125, which they don't make anymore, and they were massive back in the day. And since they've gone, we've always been waiting for that replacement of the DT 125. This is the closest that I've found to it. And the good thing with it is that the engine is 14.8 brake horsepower, which is, I mean, that is just under the legal limit there for a 125 CBT learner legal bike. So you're not going to get a much more powerful bike in a 125 format than this. What we're going to do now, we're going to take it in traffic. Notorious Alphington Road in Exeter, which is always snagged up. So we'll take it into traffic and we'll see what it's like. Alright, so off we go. So filtering wise, obviously it is a very narrow bike. It is a high up bike, so I am sat on top of the bike as opposed to into it, which in itself makes you feel slightly detached from the bike because it's moving around underneath you. Power wise, it's got loads there compared to any other 125. What I've found is that there's more power all the way through the rev range, so there's no sort of peaks and troughs. There's no sort of like, well, it's alright until you get to 2000 RPM. It's just there all the time. And what it means is when you got a car which seems to want to race you at the traffic lights, then it gives you that bit much more, you know, to play with, because a lot of bikes 125s do struggle to get away if the car, you know, puts its foot down and tries to move off a bit quick. You can find yourself in a bit of a precarious position, whereas this has got that little bit more. Now the rest of the bike, the seat is quite hard obviously. It is that style bike, and it's quite narrow as well, which actually does you a favour because the bike is so high up. The mirrors are okay. The left hand one keeps on having a mind of its own and keeps on moving around a little bit. On the dash we have a fuel gauge, a speedometer, a gear indicator, a rev bar, how many miles you've done, time. There's a lot of information there considering that it is only a little tiny clock there. It is quite a twitchy bike when you lean it into the corners. If anything, you're trying to pull the bike back because it's just ready to fall right in every time, which makes it a bit more precise to ride, but a little bit more unpredictable sometimes as well, is what I'm finding. You know, the suspension is quite harsh on the back, I'm finding. It's a little bit, it's just a, you know, typical bike that's £3.5 grand. The engine seems to be made by Hyosung, which I don't know if you remember, years ago I had the GV125 Aquilla, which was a Hyosung bike, and also done an interview with Darren, who had one. He loved his Hyosung, and I've been in contact with him since, and he's put over 10,000 trouble-free miles on that bike now. A 6-speed gearbox as well. I've had 65 out of this bike, no problem at all there, and it's been very, you know, very relaxed, very comfortable. Some vibes are coming through on the handlebars and the seat, but the foot pegs out there isn't nothing at all. It is quite a new bike, so that might get better with time. Quite an exciting ride. I think it's one of those bikes you would buy and it'd be nice to have because it'll make you want to push yourself and try different you know, try different things. Whether it's wheeling the bike or whatever, in a safe place, obviously. But I think those sort of skills are good to learn, actually, because you get to know your bike a bit better. The only minus point that I can give it at the moment is the clutch is quite heavy. When you're clutching in and out of the city all the time, it does tend to start to grind a bit. It feels like it's dragging a bit, the clutch, you know. It just feels like it should be a bit easier than what it is, because at the end of the day, the 125 bikes and their clutches are always very, very light these days. But, yeah, it's a good start anyway. Quite like the bike. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to move over and go straight to the Walkaround. Nice looking bike, super motard style. Got the big chunky forks at the front. I must admit, when I first found out I was getting this bike, I was a bit concerned about those front forks, because on this style bike you really need to have a very strong front end, purely because of what people will be doing on these bikes. You know, they're going to be practicing wheelies and all sorts, in the right places, of course. The suspension is okay. The fit and finish is you know, pretty good as well. I don't really see any issues there. I think some of the chrome parts could probably be better, but that's always the case. There's always going to be a bit of a trade-off with a bike that's under £4,000. Now, the price of this bike is £3,349 plus on the road costs, which is normally around £100 or so. So I think for what you get with this bike, I think it's a good price. It's a very fair price, and let's face it, there's nothing else at the moment, to my knowledge, on the road that's like this at the moment in a 125 format. With the bike being water cooled, it is quite a smooth engine as well. It's not a raucous, characterful engine as such. It is quite kind of flat, really, in many ways, and that's not a bad thing. Obviously, that's a good thing if you're just using it as a commuter. It does feel like, you know, it's nice and smooth and easy to live with, I suppose you could say. We've got spokes at the front and the rear, 17-inch rims on each side, which again is suited to this style bike and road riding. If you want to do off-road with it, then it's going to be okay as well. We have a plastic bash guard down here, which isn't really up to much, but at least it's going to stop all the pebbles flicking back at the bike. We have a small headlight on the front, which is LED. It's not particularly great at night, but it has got a nice high field of beam, you know, because the bike's quite high. It does keep it away from the actual road surface. So this bike produces 14.8 horsepower at 9,500 RPM, and maximum torque is 11.5 Newton meters at 8,500 RPM. It's a 6-speed gearbox, which feels precise and nicely put together. Robust upside down 54mm front forks. The fuel tank is only 6.5 litres, which is kind of normal for this style bike, I guess. They're not known for having large fuel tanks. And with it being a 125, you're going to get around 120 miles to the gallon anyway, easily, so you should be okay. Colour options are black with laser blue or grey with cyber yellow. You get a 2-year warranty with the bike. First year is for parts, labour and breakdown, and the second year is for parts only. Right, so overall I've made a list of things which I really like about this bike. There is a lot to like about this bike, I think, if it's your style. The first thing is the wavy discs. I think give the bike a nice look. Dual channel ABS. This is the first Sinnis which I've ridden which has had independent ABS on the front and back, so that's great. Shock guard, which is on the back here, which stops all the mud flicking up and going into your coil spring and rear shock. I think that's great for a bike at this price point. And also I've listed the engine as a major plus point as well, because it has got a nice amount of power considering that it's only a 125cc. And I like the way that this bike makes you feel like, you know, you can explore your biking skills and get better at certain things, you know, such as trying to pull wheelies and things like that. It certainly encourages you to do that sort of thing. Is that a bad thing? Probably yes, if it's on the road, but if you go out somewhere out the way with a friend, then I think it does you good to practice these things, so you learn how to control a bike. So onto the things that I dislike about the bike. It's still quite a light coating, although it is powder coated here. It's not a particularly built up kind of finish there, so that's the first thing. Most importantly, the clutch is quite heavy on this bike. I think that could have been a lot lighter, so if you're going through traffic, it can start to ache your wrist a bit in no time at all. And it's only 141 kilograms, which is quite light for a bike like this. It does feel very light as well. Now, obviously, it is a very high up bike. I think it's going to niche itself in that way. You know, I'm 5'8". I've got a 30-inch inside leg measurement, and I'm just on the balls of my feet there. It's not the sort of bike that you sit on and the rear sinks a lot. It does still tend to stay quite tight and quite stiff on the back. So, I mean, it might help if I adjusted the preload a bit, but if you're under 5 foot, I think you're going to struggle a bit with this bike. So it is very much a high up bike, which will suit many people, but unfortunately, it won't be for many other people. Getting on and off the bike is easy. I leave the side stand down, which is a nice chunky big side stand, and I'll just get on and off via the pegs. But overall, I like the bike. I think that there's a lot to be said for it. I think it's great that we have something in this style on the market again, because as I say, the market's been crying out for something like this for a long time now. Whereas every other manufacturer seems to be cancelling these bikes. People like SINNIS and the like are bringing them back in and keeping it all alive. So I think that's really good. So thank you very much for watching. Much appreciated. If you could like and subscribe if you haven't done already. I have got more coming up on this bike. So yeah, brilliant. Thank you very much, and I'll see you next week.